Hello, happy Wednesday. You're watching Deep in the Stripes. This is the sickest Bengals podcast around. I am your host, Elise Jesse, and we are going to discuss whether or not the Cincinnati Bengals can clip the wings off of those Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Deep in the Stripes with Elise Jesse.
From 31 yards, McPherson. And Cincinnati is heading to the Super Bowl. They did it. They beat Mahomes at home. Wow, Joe Burrow. No way.
The sickest Cincinnati Bengals podcast. It's gonna be sick.
All right, I'm just going to get straight to the point for my 3 keys to the game, and we'll discuss further with each one. Obviously, run the ball better. And stop the run, of course, with Saquon Barkley coming in, who had 176 rushing yards on 24 carries, I believe, and be better on third down. It's that simple. I really think it's that simple going into week 8 with the Philadelphia Eagles. And let's start off with the way or their ability to run the ball on Monday. And you'll find on Mondays, if you are paying attention to this show, we do it twice a week. And every Monday, it's always like a reaction kind of day to the game previous. And I usually have not an overreaction, but it's just I get pissed off about little things, I guess you could say. And then once I have time to like actually review the film and see what's going on, I'm a little bit calmer. So it's a little bit more of a calm day today. We'll say that. As far as running the ball, though, obviously, what I said, I still believe on Monday. 59 rushing yards on 25 carries, not good enough. Not going to get it done. It's no secret that the offense has been clunky. And yes, I fully agree with Joe Burrow that you would rather win ugly than lose pretty. I agree with that. Granted, that 5-touchdown game against the Baltimore Ravens was so much fun to watch, but was anybody happy with the result outside of the Baltimore Ravens and their fan base? No. Well, maybe some people other people in the NFL, but people in Cincinnati were not happy. So in order to stop the run or to run the ball, you've got to find those rush lanes. I'm sure that they are going to be working on that this week. One thing I do want to talk to you guys about, and I'll do a little bit of the story time. I don't think I've ever told this story. It's from back in the day when I was working in local news. And I'm telling this story because I see so many of you either in the comments or like in my mentions on social media talking about how awful Frank Pollock is, offensive line coach Frank Pollock for the Cincinnati Bengals, and how you want to get rid of him. And I'm just going to tell you this. Do you guys remember under Marvin Lewis and Frank Pollock came to be the offensive line coach after they got rid of Paul Alexander? So Frank Pollock comes to Cincinnati. He was with the Cowboys for like 4 or 5 seasons, comes to Cincinnati for that 1 year. And after 2018, obviously the ticket sales started going down. The Cincinnati Bengals hadn't made the playoffs since 2015. They still failed that year to win a playoff game. And so ticket sales were dropping, obviously. And so the franchise and Marvin Lewis, they decide to part ways. And so Frank Pollock is sitting there, and obviously Zach Taylor was a late hire. I don't think his first day was until like the first week of February, if I remember correctly, in 2019. So it was a late hire because obviously Zach Taylor was coaching the Super Bowl. So Frank Pollock is sitting there, and as a coach, you're like, your head coach just got fired. You don't know if you're going to get saved by the next guy. You don't know if the next guy coming in is going to want you as his offensive line coach, or if he already has a guy in mind. Maybe you guys have different philosophies and don't agree on stuff. Like there's so many things that can happen in the coaching world. And so Frank Pollock was sitting there like, I either wait to talk to Zach Taylor, who I don't know, and hope for the best, or I can go to New York where I already know that I have a guaranteed opportunity because the Jets wanted to hire him out. I have a guaranteed opportunity with the New York Jets. So that means that I am able to still coach no matter what, and I am able to feed my family and fund my life, right? So he makes that decision. So I'm hearing all of this about Frank Pollock. I get it on multiple sources, and granted, I'm working in local news. So of course, the second that you have Any kind of big news stuff, you want to let it out as soon as possible. That's usually how they operate. So as soon as I put the news out there that Frank Pollock was leaving, one of the first people that I heard from was Joe Mixon. He messaged me almost instantly, like the second I put the breaking news out there. And he said, "What are you talking about? There's no way. Why is he leaving?" Like, he was just like, he had 21 questions going. Okay. He was pissed. The running back was pissed that the offensive line coach was leaving. He was very disappointed in that situation. And, I explained to him as much as I knew. And the reason why Joe Mixon was upset was because Frank Pollock had worked so closely with the running back room and the running back coach at the time, Kyle Kasky, to figure out what they could do to increase their run game, increase the numbers, increase the explosives on the ground. And it was working. Joe Mixon that year had over 1,100 rushing yards. He had 8 touchdowns on the ground that season. I think he had another touchdown receiving. He had a hell of a year. So he didn't want to see the guy that was helping him this whole time leave. Heck no. And then Zach Taylor comes in. I don't think Zach even got to talk to Frank Pollock at all. So he was coming in late. Most of the good coaches were already kind of taken. And he was just doing the best that he could to try to fill out a staff going into the 2019 season. So Frank Pollock, still the run game coordinator, still works very closely with Justin Hill. And trust me, he is paying attention. If I know anything about Frank Pollock, he is looking at those numbers. He knows that's not good enough. And I have a very good feeling that he and Justin Hill will be working something out to figure out how to be more explosive in the run game, especially with the Eagles coming into town, because the Eagles D-line, just like the Giants D-line, just like the Browns D-line, very good. The Eagles D-line, they've got Josh Sweat, Brandon Graham, Bryce Huff, Nolan Smith. They rotate those guys, and those guys are very productive. In fact, they had 5 sacks on Deshaun Watson a couple of weeks ago. They had 7 sacks on Jones, and then they had 1 sack on Drew Lock last week. They have 13 sacks in 2 weeks. They're not messing around. They're, what is it called? The sack attack. They're having a blast with the sack attack so far. And it's going to be extremely tough, to find an explosive run game on Sunday, which is an absolute must, by the way. And it's going to be tough, B, to keep Joe Burrow upright and make sure he has a clean pocket. So I think that it's going to be reliant on the run and making sure that this Cincinnati Bengals offense does not look one-dimensional, that they can, because obviously Jim Schwartz also, we've got to mention Jim Schwartz because he is a fantastic defensive coordinator, and he is very good at taking away a team's top option through the air. That he's definitely going to focus on taking away Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. So the Cincinnati Bengals already know, they understand this very well, that they have got to figure out a way to have an explosive offense going into week 8 if they want to even out their record at 4-4. Stopping the run. That's going to be okay. So it's Monday. When I saw Saquon Barkley's numbers, I was like, oh my gosh, how are the Cincinnati Bengals going to do this? But I was looking at those numbers in the spirit of the weeks 1 through 4 Cincinnati Bengals defense, I guess. So I want to go through the numbers with you. We're going to go through the last 3 weeks because the Cincinnati Bengals, their defense, as far as stopping the run, the key guys in the opponent's rush game have been pretty good. So you see week 5, Derrick Henry, of course, a huge name in the NFL. He only had 15 carries, 92 yards, 6.1 was the average. Sheldon Rankins was not playing in this game, by the way, week 5. Week 6, Tyrone Tracy Jr., 17 carries, 50 yards, 2.9 the average. And then last week, everyone was talking, including me. Like, I was expecting Nick Chubb to come in and completely obliterate them, to be honest with you, on the ground. And he did not do that. The Cincinnati Bengals held their own against Nick Chubb, 11 carries for 22 yards, 2 yards a carry was the average for him. He did have a touchdown. So total in 3 games, 43 carries, 164 yards. They're only allowing a 3.8 average over the last 3 games. That's big time. That's big time. We have been talking about the Cincinnati defense, obviously, since week 1, and they were shaky the first few weeks, and they were not settled the first few weeks, and they were injured the first few weeks. And now I think that we are really starting to see this defense for who they knew they were. Do you remember me talking about it? I was like, these guys, they keep telling me we're going to put it together. We're going to be better. It's going to be different. And in my mind, I'm like, in what way? Like, how is that going to happen? Let me see it. Well, now they're showing us, aren't they? They have been much better at stopping the run. And obviously Saquon Barkley had a revenge game of the century going into last week because he was with the New York Giants. He did not want to leave the Giants organization, and the Giants let him go to a rival. You already know that John Mara was just like shaking his head. I don't even know if he was able to finish watching that game. If I was him, I would be pissed off because he did not want Saquon Barkley to leave. And that's unfortunately what happened in that building. So Saquon Barkley comes back, and I was hearing stories of, Giants fans burning his jersey on the way in. And this guy is probably thinking like, what the heck? It wasn't my decision. You didn't want to pay me. It wasn't my decision. Like, what? So he's getting all this hate coming in to MetLife, and he shut him up. He shut him up real quick. 176 rushing yards on the day. He's going to be a tough guy to handle. I think that it's going to be tough additionally because you also have Jalen Hurts, who is also a mobile quarterback. It's like a 1-2 punch. So they're going to have to figure out a way to not only stop Saquon Barkley, but they're also going to have to figure out a way to handle Jalen Hurts because he will definitely run on you if you allow him to do that. That he is not scared to do any of that whatsoever. I feel like their offense also finds a lot of explosives with their receivers. AJ Brown will find his receivers, and there's a handful of other guys who do as well. But it's just, I believe Saquon Barkley, he had like a 64 or 59-yard touchdown run or something so far this year. So when they have the opportunity, they definitely take advantage of those explosives. And then better on third down. I mean, come on now. Do I need to say more about that? We already know that has to be better. And me saying it and me harping on it is not going to change the way they are on third down. Zach Taylor has to get his coaching staff and his players together, and they have to be better on third down from a defensive standpoint and also from an offensive standpoint. You've got to convert on third down, extend those drives, eat some time off the clock, and defensively, you want to get off the field at third down. You're going to get that defense off the field. Put the ball back in Joe Burrow's hands. Yes, the offense has been clunky, but you always feel better as a Bengals fan, and I'm sure as a Cincinnati coach, when you see Joe Burrow with the ball in his hands. That game will be a huge one because the Cincinnati Bengals have an opportunity to even out their record at 4-4. They're 1-1 in the AFC North now, and they're still on that journey of clawing their way out of the hole that they created for themselves in the first 3 weeks of the season. And they're able to do it. So far, yes, when they need one side of the ball to step up, they do it. The Cincinnati Bengals, they were allowing like 33 points, over 20 points for the majority of the season. And then these last 2 games, in 8 quarters, they've only allowed 21 points to their opponents. So they are settling in. They are shaping up. They are looking more comfortable in this defense as a unit. Obviously, health in some areas is on their side. You're hoping that Geno Stone is better. His tibia is not in a bad situation. I know Zach Taylor is talking right as we're recording this, so we're probably finding that out on social media as I speak. But Yeah, in most areas, especially the areas where it counts, like defensive line, I think was a big area where you want health on your side. And now that they have BJ Hill back, who is a game wrecker, and they have Sheldon Rankins back, who really makes life tough for quarterbacks. His rushes in the interior are incredible, and his veteran presence makes such a difference for that defensive line. And when they are able to rush the passer and have an effect on the quarterback and collapse the pocket, that just makes it easier on down the line with the linebackers and the safeties. It just makes their jobs so much easier. And when your job is a little bit easier, the game's a little bit slower, you're able to keep opponents off the board. So it'll be an interesting matchup, I think. I think the Eagles will present quite a few challenges for the Cincinnati Bengals. But I don't think that any of those are challenges that the Cincinnati Bengals aren't able to overcome or prepare for. We'll talk about play calling a little bit, because y'all are on level 10 when you're talking about play calling and Zach Taylor. Obviously, we haven't seen everything in his playbook just yet. He's probably saving a lot of that for the expected down the line, playing in the playoffs, playing deep into the postseason, if that happens for them. But yeah, I would like to see a little spicier play calling, but we've been calling for that for a very, very long time, and that just doesn't seem to be something that they lean into very often. They like to go to their guaranteed wins, which is obviously Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Go routes, they love those a lot, and that's what they're going to work with. Hopefully they can run the ball a little bit more and find some explosives that way. But yeah, I think most of you are wasting your breath when you're calling for Zach Taylor to be fired. I've already said that numerous times on this podcast. It's not going to happen. And I think most of you are wasting your breath when you're talking about Zach Taylor's play calling, losing games. Zach Taylor and his play calling, it is what it is. Get used to it. This is what it is. Okay. We've seen 2 wins though. Yes, clunky offense, not what you want to see as far as excitement, but it has equaled 2 more wins. The Bengals are 3-4, still clawing out. They could be 4-4 at the end of the game on Sunday. By the way, that game changed. So if you're planning to go to that game and you're watching this right now, it is no longer a 4:25 kickoff. It is a regular 1 p.m. kickoff. So earlier in the afternoon on Sunday. And yes, I will be there at that game. So if you see me, say hi. I will say hi back. And we can exchange, philosophies, words on football, whatever you want to do. But yeah, subscribe, like, comment. That only gets this content out to more Bengals fans who are looking for new and different content. But as usual, I will see you on Monday afternoon after the Bengals play the Eagles.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Deep in the Stripes with Elise Jesse on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.